and welcome back to Game Escape Retro Reads. Here today with episode 2, looking at one of my favorite video game issues of all time, and that is the 1994 video game Buyer's Guide. And if you saw my retro crapbox parody, I actually pulled this out and kind of said it looks like it's been eaten by a small animal, and it really has. You know, a lot of my magazines are in really good shape, but you can see this one is torn and tattered. I spent the entire sort of, I guess, winter of 93 into 94 just salivating over this magazine. You can see here in the corner you have the Super Mario Land 2 write-up, which really got me excited to play that game on the Game Boy. So as we see, you know, on the cover, we have Games of the Year. We're going to have Systems of the Year. Just seeing this, you know, over 500 games, really, I don't know, there was just something about this that I just read this constantly. Even after 94, I would just keep on coming back to this. Again, this was the internet before the internet, as it were. Let's see if we can get the mouse thing out of here. So right off the bat, we see some Captain America stuff. Best and Worst of 93, Systems Overview, EGM rates the systems. Love that. That was the source of so many arguments and, you know, fanboy fights for me and a lot of my friends back then. Tons of reviews. Like I said, I think some of these pages are missing, so we'll just see how far we can get. Anyone remember the Secret of Mana ad? I mean, this was just made me want to play this game so badly. Just the beautiful green trees, I mean, the artistry of it. I was really upset that I didn't have an SNES to check this out. RoboCop vs. Terminator. Alright, Best and Worst of 93. See if we can that in the frame a little bit better. So what I thought was interesting, I guess it didn't strike me as being odd so much back in the day, but today certainly a very interesting choice for Game of the Year, and that was Samurai Shodown for the Neo Geo. And, you know, to me, Samurai Shodown was always interesting. It was a game that I certainly spent quite a bit of, I shouldn't say quite a bit of time, but, you know, it seemed like every arcade that I went to, I've said this many times, you know, you had your Street Fighter machines, you had your Mortal Kombat machines, and then you had the SNK sort of multi-game systems, and Samurai Shodown was always one of those games. And, you know, I did play it when I couldn't get on those other machines. Nonetheless, Samurai Shodown, to me, while a unique concept, was never, I don't know, it just seemed mediocre. Especially once King of Fighters came out, which I liked a lot more, and some of the later Fatal Fury games I thought were a little bit better, but a very interesting choice, and the article here talks about, you know, the innovation of being able to use weapons, and I guess that certainly was new at that time. Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Game of the Year for the Super Nintendo, and you know, I would definitely agree with that. You know, it was one of those games, I mean, I think I talked about it in my Street Fighter episode, really got me excited about Street Fighter. And, well, actually, no, that was probably the first one, because I think this came out sort of concurrent with the Genesis game, which I actually had, but I played this, the regular Street Fighter 2 and the Turbo edition at a cousin's house, really loved it. And then, of course, for Sega, Aladdin. And now this is kind of interesting, because Aladdin really was one of the bragging points for Genesis players, because I believe the Genesis game looked better and played better than the Super Nintendo game. In fact, it was a different game. So, to us, back in the day, especially Sega fanboys, or, you know, in my opinion, in my position rather, someone who was kind of forced into being a Sega fanboy, even though secretly I was an SNES supporter, but you know, Aladdin really did seem like a reason to own the system. So that game was universally praised, so I could definitely see that as the game of the year. And let's see, what else? See if we can get you guys a better look here. If we just drop the camera down a bit and raise it, maybe it's a little bit better. Do that. Sorry guys for the... Yeah, I think that's a little bit better of a look. Game of the Year for the Sega CD, Sonic CD. Totally agree with that. Sonic CD, I really enjoyed it. I remember kind of feeling justified, like, okay, now I have the Sega CD. Sonic CD does look special. It had the, well, it wasn't Mode 7, but it had that kind of 3D-esque special stages. The only thing I didn't like was the time travel mechanic, because I thought the present stages were actually so beautiful that the future and past stages kind of paled in comparison. So that was my only complaint, but I think clearly Game of the Year for the Sega CD. For the Duo, Bomberman 93, totally, I was streaming that game. Actually, I was streaming 94 this summer, but the Bomberman games on the TurboGrafx and the Duo, absolutely incredible. Neo Geo, well, of course, Samurai Shodown, they just mentioned that. Game of the Year on the Nintendo, the original Kirby's Adventure. It says here, if there is a member of your family that doesn't require 16-bit graphics, then Kirby is the game to get. Yeah, I remember being impressed by that and kind of wishing that I still held on to the NES to give that one a try, although I played at a friend's house. Game Boy, of course, one of my favorite games of all time. Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, not much needs to be said there. And Sonic Chaos, a Sonic, I guess that was maybe the third Sonic game for the Game Gear, and I never actually played or owned that, so that's something I'd like to check out eventually. Best RPG, Secret of Mana. I would agree there, because I think Chrono Trigger came out in 94, so I think Secret of Mana was a good choice. Best Fighting Game went to Samurai Shodown, so that's running away with it. Best Shooter, Star Fox. See, I was never a Star Fox fan, so I don't know what other shooters came out in 93 offhand. I would imagine there were some pretty good ones on the Duo, but yeah, not my cup of tea. Gunstar Heroes, which I played fairly recently, very, very good game, and I would say that was one of the best action games. You know, it's a little on the hard side, but I would agree with that. Best sports game, Madden 94. I totally agree with that. I put more hours into Madden 94 than I would care to admit, and the Genesis version, I think, was the best version. It had, you know, those slightly larger player sprites. I believe you had historic teams, and my friends and I put hours into that, so definitely agree there. Best driving game, we have Interplay's Rock and Roll Racing. I have never played that. Did play this. I picked this up on the Genesis over the summer, and it is an abysmal fighting game. Tournament Fighters. I think I streamed that too. I mean, look at this magazine. Look at all of these award categories. This is why I was salivating over this. Best Street Fighter 2 Wannabe, Clay Fighter. I guess to an extent, but I would wonder when they released World Heroes for the Super Nintendo, because that was, I think, the most egregious Street Fighter ripoff of all time. Bloodiest game, RoboCop vs. Terminator. Do not remember that. Best new character, Arrow the Acrobat. Well, he did not last very long. Hottest game, Hunk. Was Mortal Kombat. So I guess Goro. Interesting. Hottest game, Babe. Cammy. Okay, well, that she has survived as a cosplay favorite for all these years. Most hype for a character, Bubsy. I guess I remember that to a degree, but never really liked Bubsy. Dumbest peripherals, the 4-player adapter. Why is it dumb? Well, I don't know. I mean, I never really needed a 4-player adapter, but I guess if you did, then why, what's the issue? Most controversial game, Mortal Kombat, definitely. I remember picking that up at launch, and, I felt like a total badass pulling off those fatalities, even though it's kind of goofy today. Worst system launch, 3DO. Now, I can't quite read this from here, but it seems like they're talking about the price. Of course, the price was insane. Game company with the worst reputation. THQ. Interesting. And they're talking about how Home Alone was terrible. Well, don't really remember that. Most improved game company. THQ as well. Okay. Best trick that didn't work. Let's see. Certified boss code that combines. Yeah. So Game Genie code that caused Street Fighter 2 to glitch. Best music, ActRaiser. I don't know that I ever. Well, no, I did rent ActRaiser at some point, but I can't remember the music. Best sound effects went to Clay Fighter. Okay. Best animation, Aladdin. Agree with that. Most lawsuits, Nintendo. Talking about that whole thing with Atari. So yeah, I'd agree with that. Best lawsuit results. Sega versus Codemasters and Accolade. So it's funny, Accolade and Codemasters won a lawsuit and became a Sega partner. Best ad went to Clay Fighter, ripping off Mortal Kombat. Best movie game, Aladdin, totally agree. Worst movie to game, Home Alone 2. Best game duo, Pocky and Rocky. Someone told me that Natsume had actually found some old stock, and Pocky and Rocky was one of them. They had an unopened Pocky and Rocky on eBay for the SNES, and it went for $300-400. It was just a couple weeks ago. Most sequels, Madden, and hasn't that continued? Only difference is back in these days, Madden was good. What else do we have here? Lethal Enforcers. I believe I had this, and I cannot find it. Because I remember the blue gun for the Sega CD. I'd love to know where that went. And here we go, the System Wars. And this was the part of the magazine that just absolutely drew me in. So, my thoughts on the Genesis, SNES. Let's see what they say about the Sega CD. The Sega CD promised a lot for the money, but as many people know, it didn't get off to a great start. Games were slow in getting to the store shelves, and those that were mostly and those that did were mostly cartridge-based conversions with CD music. That is true. That has all changed. More CD games like RoboLast, Sonic CD, and Sylpheed offer plenty of excitement. I always called that Slipheed as a kid. The new unit, has also been restyled. Like the Genesis, comes at a lower price and a flip-top lid. Yeah, strangely though, those 16-bit games with CD soundtracks are kind of nostalgic to me now. But yeah, that was a letdown. So, the Duo, which I had just about gotten out of the TurboGrafx world at that point. Neo Geo, of course, everyone's salivating over that. Here we have the Jaguar. God, and to think that this is, the retro VGS was going to, come out and have that shell. but the Jaguar was underwhelming. Yeah, I love the 3DO, but that was not going to happen. What else do we have here? Now, the system that I really wanted, and that, of course I was never going to get, and now is very pricey, but I kind of, every now and then, kind of look to see if a Pioneer LaserActive is for sale. Now, some of them do go for sale, but to get a complete one with the karaoke thing, the Genesis deck, and the turbo deck, which is really expensive. I mean, you're talking $2-3 grand. But I love the idea. I loved stereo equipment as a kid, the multi-disc changers, laser disc players, receivers, and there was always the battle between Pioneer and Sony, and so this had everything. This was like a killer piece of stereo equipment, plus the video games. Just so sad that I never got my hands on one and never will. And then, of course, we have all the standard stuff, the NES, Turbo Express. At some point I had a chance to buy one. I want to say the price, and they list the price here is at $200. I want to say at some point for some Christmas, like towards the end of its life, it was $150, and I passed on it. That's a killer. And then we had the awards, and after reading about the system, this killed me. I was like, oh, damn it, I knew the SNES was going to win. I want an SNES. Yeah, the LaserActive didn't do so well. The Duo didn't do so well because it didn't have, NEC's support at that time. But, I poured over this. Absolutely poured over it. And it was kind of interesting because this was the transition year from 16-bit to 32-bit, obviously before a PlayStation and Saturn. So you can see kind of like the early attempts at the 32-bit consoles. And so, I don't know, there was just something about seeing it all together on one page that, got me dreaming about what 32-bit could be like, how the 3DO, how the Jaguar, how even the Amiga CD, even though that was a failure, would evolve. And then, of course, you heard rumors about the new Sega system, the new Sony system. So, yeah, something about these pages just got me so excited. And it's so funny that the Game Boy was rated so low here, because I bought a Game Boy either shortly before or shortly after this. I talked about it in my Link's Awakening video. I actually went out in a snowstorm to get it. I don't know why my parents did that, but it was one of my fondest gaming memories. And of course, as we're digging out from the blizzard of 2016, I kind of thought of that. Royal Rumble, this was a Christmas gift. God, I loved these games, but going back, they were so bad. And why did I love them? Well, you could do the finishers. Zombies Ain't My Neighbors. Now, this game, actually, if you have this in box for the SNES, ton of money. And it was actually fun. I rented it on several occasions. Evolution of CD-ROM technology. So again, kind of a more substantive write-up on all those reviews. Let's see what else we have. Quarterback Club. Montana playing for the Chiefs. And then you had these power ratings. I guess all of the games that they reviewed in 2016, in 1993. And this is so funny. Look at all the, I don't know if you guys can see this, but look at all the check marks I was kind of going through and picking out what I wanted to play. This is interesting. What did I... God. Boy, I had some terrible taste. Look at... I put a check mark next to Bob, and I actually got that game. Might be underrated. But still, Fatal Fury. Wanted that. I don't know if these were all games that they reviewed. Now, this is just kind of the Genesis library. Test Drive 2, I wound up getting that. I wanted Mike Ditka Football. That was bad. I selected James Pond. Jerry Glanville's Pro Foot Brawl. Splatterhouse 2. What was I thinking? The Terminator, but I didn't want Thunder Force. Very interesting to see your mentality as a kid. Did I have any other selections here? No. Now, I wanted Time Gal and Echo CD. I wonder what Time Gal was. I have to go back. But this was the, you know, the fun of it as a kid, just sitting down and coming up with a dream list. Now, it's so funny because I didn't select Final Fight, but I did get that. And that was one of that was the best, I think, Sega CD game for me, in my opinion, anyway. What else do we have here? Game Boy. What did I select for Game Boy? Batman, Return of the Joker. Dr. Mario. Well, that was good. Dr. Mario, Mega Man 3. Ren and Stimpy. What the hell? Streets of Rage for the Game Gear I wanted. Mortal Kombat. I did get Mortal Kombat. Didn't get Streets of Rage. What else? What else? Special feature on Super Street Fighter 2. I kind of talked about that in my last episode of Die Hard Game Fan. I'm not going to go into that, but you know, again, this write-up got me very pumped for that game. And then, you know, you had the reviews. And again, EGM criticized for not having the greatest layouts, but, you know, I mean, look at the artwork. I mean, I think this is fine. As far as a colorful layout that you know, got you to really want these games. Super Star Wars. Talked about that in the last magazine. I'm not going to, again, go into that, but that trench run looked pretty good. I never managed to get to that part of the game. And Mortal Kombat. Super Empire Strikes Back. Now, the Clay Fighter, I think I mentioned the Clay Fighter. I was so excited about Clay Fighter because of these pre-rendered graphics that I you know, was like, oh god, you know, I wish I could buy stock in this company. But yeah, this write-up got me excited about it. And to a degree, these magazines, you know, these sort of compilation magazines give you a little bit more artwork and level overviews. Super Mario All-Stars was a game that I absolutely loved. You know, when I finally got my SNES, this was one of the first games that I purchased and still have it mint, complete in box. Spent a ton of time on it. Again, just to see the old Mario games with the Super NES graphics was really something, and being able to play the Lost Levels was great. Here we have Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I talked about that. Talked about not being the biggest Star Fox fan. You know, it's funny because Star Fox, yeah, it never grabbed me. None of them grabbed me. For the N64. There's one abysmal, like, I don't know what you'd call it. It was like a third-person action game on the GameCube. That was terrible. And there was, I guess, a proper one, which I didn't care for. So, you know, Star Fox just didn't do it for me. Battletoads in Battle Maniacs. This was a good game. I remember enjoying that. Super Turrican. Always found these to be so hard. Like, to me, it looked like a cooler Mega Man with some really great music for the Genesis version. But I mean, to me, it was harder than Mega Man. It didn't control as well, obviously, but man, wish I still had my copy of Turrican on the Turbo Graphics. And then here you have Bubsy. I think I rented this once and just didn't do it for me. Again, that attempt to create a profitable mascot. Pocky and Rocky. I never did play this, but again, going for $300-400 new on eBay a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Should have been more interested in it back in the day. Look at all these SNES reviews. I mean, this definitely got me pumped for the SNES. Battletoads versus Double Dragon. Now, this one I never did play. But I remember it looking really, really cool. This is one I have to find on emulator. Now, Super Street Fighter II Champion Edition. I believe I got this. It came out like this Christmas season of '93. So I remember having the game before, you know, getting this magazine, and then I felt justified. I was like, oh yes, look at this write-up. Finally, they are, you know, I made the right choice here because I can play as the boss characters, and you know, oh, so I felt great. Now, obviously, they do the screenshots. I didn't care that the Super Nintendo version looked a lot better and that the sound was better, but I just felt like, yep, I made the right choice in asking for this for Christmas, and I got this thing. I still have this. This was not a great controller. Really not a great controller. But I saw the 9s, and I felt like I had won. I don't know what I won, but I had won. Flashback, that was a rental. Kind of had that, like, that rotoscope Prince of Persia feel to it. I wasn't a fan of that. Jungle Strike. You know, it was funny. Someone, my buddy gave me a complete in box SNES Jungle Strike. But I never thought to play this. And what else do we have? Again, Mortal Kombat. On the Genesis, I had this as well during the Christmas season, so love that they gave you the moves here. A friend of mine and I remember we stayed up all night, and we put in these codes and just learned every character, did all the fatalities. It was wonderful. Sonic 2. It's funny because I thought this came out in '92. But Sonic 2, one of the best games on the Genesis. Shinobi 3 was a game that I didn't play. Well, I think I rented it once, but I didn't play it too much back then. Got it not too long ago, and was really impressed by it. Really nice game for the Genesis. Out of This World. Echo. So, you know, as you can see, I'm getting towards the end here, and the pages are kind of ripped out. Let's just see. Cool Spot, the 7-Up game. You don't really see 7-Up in the stores a lot. I already talked about Sonic CD there in the opening. Title Tempest. So, this was just, as you can see, a great magazine. So much stuff to do, to look at. So many things to dream about. And I really had a blast doing it. So I thank you guys, as always, for joining me for Retro Reads. Let me know if you like this style of video, and I will go into the pile of magazines and do this again. Thanks a lot, guys.